Captain Jake Morrison had always prided himself on being an excellent pilot, right up until the moment his navigation system decided to have what could only be described as a complete nervous breakdown, somewhere between the Tau Ceti system and absolutely nowhere useful. The crash landing that followed was less graceful emergency descent and more angry meteor with commitment issues. As Jake crawled out of his smoking ship, nursing a bruised ego and a collection of new dents, he found himself face to face with what appeared to be a pack of bipedal wolves. They stood about 7 feet tall, covered in mottled gray fur, with eyes that glowed an unsettling shade of amber in the alien sunset. Their leader, a particularly imposing specimen, stepped forward and announced in perfectly translated English, "I am Alpha Gralfang, and you have entered our hunting territory." Jake blinked. Gralfang. Really? That's the name you went with? "I chose it myself," Gralfang replied, puffing out his chest. "It strikes fear into the hearts of our enemies." "Right. Well, Gralfang, I'm Captain Jake Morrison, and I'm having what you might call a really bad day. So if you're planning to eat me, could you maybe put it on your calendar for next Tuesday? I've got a headache." What happened next was without question the most pathetic attempt at predatory behavior Jake had ever witnessed. Gralfang and his pack began what could generously be called a hunt, but looked more like a group of enthusiastic but severely uncoordinated dancers trying to perform Swan Lake while wearing blindfolds. First, they attempted to surround him. This would have been intimidating if they hadn't kept bumping into each other and apologizing. Then, they tried to look menacing by baring their impressive fangs, but somehow managed to make it look more like an awkward dental examination. One of them even tripped over his own feet and landed face first in a patch of purple moss. "Are you guys actually trying to hunt me right now?" Jake asked, watching as another pack member got distracted by a butterfly and wandered off mid-stalking. Gralfang's ears drooped slightly. "We are fearsome predators," he insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. "We have been tracking you for several minutes." "Several whole minutes? Wow. I'm genuinely impressed you found me next to the giant smoking crater." The truth began to dawn on Jake as he observed the pack more closely. Despite their intimidating appearance, these aliens had all the predatory instincts of a bunch of golden retrievers. They kept getting distracted, their coordinated attack looked like a poorly choreographed flash mob, and when one of them tried to demonstrate his hunting prowess by pouncing on a rock, the rock won. "Let me ask you something, Gralfang," Jake said, sitting down on a convenient boulder. "When was the last time you guys actually caught something?" The silence that followed was so complete Jake could hear the wind whistling through his damaged ship's hull. The pack members exchanged glances, shuffled their feet, and generally looked like students who'd been asked to explain why they hadn't done their homework for the past 6 months. "We are," Gralfang began, then stopped. He tried again. "The thing is..." Another pause. Finally, his shoulders sagged in defeat. "We might be having some technical difficulties with the whole predator thing." What followed was possibly the most embarrassing confession in the history of interspecies relations. Gralfang, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else in the galaxy, explained their situation with all the enthusiasm of someone reading their own obituary. "The truth is, Captain Morrison, we are carnivores who cannot hunt. Our prey, the bouncers, are too quick and too clever for us. They mock us with their superior agility and what we can only assume is their advanced tactical knowledge." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Advanced tactical knowledge? What exactly are these bouncers?" "Rabbit-like creatures about the size of your Earth cats," admitted a smaller pack member who'd been trying to hide behind Gralfang. "I am Beta Fang Whisper, second in command. The bouncers have been evading us for cycles. They seem to know our every move before we make it." "Right," Jake said slowly. "So you're telling me that a pack of 7-foot-tall wolf creatures is being outsmarted by space rabbits?" The pack collectively winced. Fang Whisper began wringing his claws together nervously. "When you put it like that, it sounds rather pathetic. We have been surviving on berries and root vegetables. Do you know how humiliating it is for a apex predator to live on a vegetarian diet? My ancestors are probably spinning in their burial caves." Gralfang shot him a warning look. "Fang Whisper tends to overthink our situation." "Overthink?" Fang Whisper's voice cracked. "Gralfang, we are the laughingstock of the ecosystem. Yesterday, a bouncer actually stopped mid-escape to groom itself. It was taunting us with superior personal hygiene." Jake stood up and walked around the pack, examining them like a drill sergeant inspecting recruits. They had powerful legs, built for running, keen eyes obviously designed for tracking, sharp claws perfect for catching prey, and impressive fangs ideal for, well, the obvious. They were evolutionary masterpieces of predatory design. They were also complete disasters at using any of it. "You know what your problem is," Jake announced. "You've got all the right equipment, but absolutely no idea how to use it. It's like watching someone try to perform surgery with a chainsaw. Technically, you've got a cutting tool, but your technique needs work." Growlfang perked up slightly. "So you think we can learn?" "Oh, I know you can learn. The question is whether you're ready to admit that maybe, just maybe, your hunting strategy of charge directly at the prey while howling about your fearsome reputation might need some minor adjustments." Jake decided to start with the basics. Very basic. Like, embarrassingly basic. "Before we even think about hunting those bouncers, we're going to learn something called patience," he announced, leading the pack to the banks of a purple river that wound through the alien landscape. "We're going fishing." Growfang examined the water suspiciously. "Fishing, but we are land predators. Surely our destiny lies in the noble pursuit of terrestrial prey." "Your destiny right now lies in not starving to death. Besides, fishing teaches you the fundamentals, patience, timing, and the revolutionary concept of waiting for your food to come to you instead of chasing it while screaming." Jake fashioned crude fishing spears from some wreckage and demonstrated the technique. "See? You wait quietly, watch for movement, then strike fast and clean. Simple." What followed was anything but simple. Growlfang's idea of fishing involved standing in the shallows and attempting to intimidate the fish into submission through a series of increasingly dramatic poses and what he called predatory speeches. "Hear me, aquatic creatures," he bellowed at the water. "I am Growlfang, terror of the surface world. Surrender yourselves to my mighty jaws, and I promise your sacrifice will be remembered in the songs of my people." The fish, apparently unimpressed by his oratory skills, continued swimming in peaceful circles. Meanwhile, Fang Whisper was having what could only be described as an existential crisis about the ethics of deception. "But Captain Morrison, are we not being dishonest with these innocent fish? We are pretending to be harmless surface dwellers while harboring predatory intentions. What if they have families? What if they were planning to meet friends later?" "Fang Whisper," Jake said patiently. "It's a fish. It has roughly the same emotional complexity as a houseplant. But what if it doesn't? What if behind those small, beady eyes lies the soul of a poet?" The other pack members weren't faring much better. One kept trying to challenge his own reflection in the water to single combat. Another had become convinced that the fish were using some form of telepathic communication to coordinate their evasion tactics, and was attempting to think like a fish by holding his breath underwater until he passed out. After 2 hours of this aquatic comedy show, Jake was beginning to question his life choices. Then, miracle of miracles, Growlfang actually managed to spear a fish. The victory celebration that followed was so loud and enthusiastic that it probably scared off every piece of aquatic life for several miles downstream. "I have conquered the finned enemy," Growlfang announced, holding up his catch like he'd just won an Olympic gold medal. "I am truly the alpha of both land and sea." "You caught one fish, Growlfang. One. Let's maybe hold off on declaring yourself ruler of the oceans just yet." But Jake had to admit, seeing the pack's genuine excitement over their first successful hunt was oddly touching. Even if it had taken them 2 hours to catch a single fish that was probably too confused to swim away properly. "Now comes the really revolutionary part," Jake announced, pulling out some basic cooking supplies from his survival kit. "We're going to cook it." The pack stared at him like he'd just suggested they teach the fish to tap dance. "Question the first group?" Cook asked hesitantly. "You mean, make it hot?" "I mean, make it taste good. Trust me on this one." After the fishing triumph, Jake decided it was time to tackle the main event, hunting the infamous bouncers. He'd observed these creatures from a distance and concluded that they were basically alien rabbits with delusions of grandeur and an unfortunate tendency to showboat. "All right, team," Jake announced, using his most serious military voice. "Today, we learn stealth, the art of moving without being detected, the ancient human technique of not announcing your presence to everything within a 3-mile radius." Growlfang nodded sagely. "Ah, yes, stealth. We know this concept. Observe." What Growlfang apparently considered stealth was a peculiar form of aggressive tiptoeing that made him look like he was performing some kind of ritualistic dance while suffering from severe constipation. He moved forward in exaggerated slow-motion steps, lifting each foot dramatically high before placing it down with the delicacy of someone defusing a bomb. The effect was about as subtle as a neon sign advertising predator approaching. That's not stealth, Growlfang, that's interpretive dance. Stealth means moving quietly and naturally, not like you're auditioning for the galaxy's most obvious mime troupe. The tracking lesson went even worse. Jake showed them basic footprint analysis, explaining how to read signs of where the bouncers had been and which direction they'd gone. The Katsuri took this lesson and somehow transformed it into something resembling a criminal investigation, crossed with a seance. Fang Whisper crouched over a set of tracks, studying them with intense concentration. "These prints tell a story," he announced solemnly. This bouncer was approximately 2 seasons old, possibly left-handed, with a tendency toward existential anxiety. I can sense its inner turmoil through these paw impressions. Fang whispered, "They're footprints, not palm readings. They tell you which way the animal went, not its psychological profile." But Fang Whisper was deep in his forensic fantasy now. "Wait, there's more." This creature had recently argued with its mate about territorial boundaries. See how the left paw presses deeper? Classic signs of relationship stress. Meanwhile, another pack member had decided that the most effective tracking method was to interrogate the footprints directly. Jake watched in amazement as the alien crouched down and began what could only be described as an interview with the ground. "Where did your maker go, small impression in the dirt? Speak and your cooperation will be noted in our official hunting records." The footprint, predictably, declined to comment. The real disaster began when they actually spotted a bouncer. The creature was about the size of a house cat, covered in iridescent blue fur, with long ears and the kind of smug expression that suggested it knew exactly how incompetent its would-be predators were. Jake's plan was simple: surround the creature quietly, cut off its escape routes, then close in as a coordinated unit. The Cathari's interpretation of this plan was something else entirely. Ralph Fang, apparently forgetting everything they'd just learned about stealth, stood up to his full 7-foot height and addressed the bouncer directly. "Small prey creature, I am Alpha Growlfang. I challenge you to honorable single combat. Face me with courage, and your defeat will be swift and noble." The bouncer tilted its head, looking genuinely puzzled by this development. "Growled Fang," Jake hissed. "You don't challenge prey to a duel, you catch it, quietly, without giving it a formal invitation to escape." But Growlfang was in full ceremonial mode now. It would be dishonorable to attack without proper declaration of intent. This creature deserves to know the identity of its worthy opponent. The bouncer, having apparently heard enough of this nonsense, gave what Jake could only interpret as a shrug and bounded away at high speed. The pack immediately gave chase, abandoning any pretense of coordination in favor of what could best be described as enthusiastic chaos. It took Jake 3 more attempts, numerous coaching sessions on the concept of working together, and a lengthy discussion about why prey animals don't appreciate formal introductions, but eventually they managed their first successful group hunt. The moment they cornered and caught their first bouncer was a thing of beauty, if you ignored the fact that it had taken them 4 hours and the poor creature had probably died more from exhaustion than actual predation. The victory celebration was immediate and overwhelming. All 7 pack members began howling triumphantly at the sky, harmonizing in what was clearly some kind of traditional hunting song. There was just one small problem. "Guys," Jake interrupted their celestial serenade, "you're howling at the wrong moon." The pack stopped mid-howl and looked up at the sky, where 2 moons hung in the alien twilight. They had been directing their victory song at the smaller, dimmer moon instead of the large, bright one that was clearly the dominant satellite. "Does it matter?" asked Fang Whisper, looking mortified. "Oh no. Have we offended the moon spirits? Will this invalidate our hunt?" "There are no moon spirits," Fang Whisper. "And yes, you just spent 5 minutes serenading the cosmic equivalent of the moon's annoying little brother." Despite the astronomical embarrassment, Jake had to admit he was proud of them. They'd actually worked together, shown patience, and caught their prey through skill rather than dumb luck. It was progress, even if it came with a side order of interplanetary confusion. With their first successful hunt behind them, Jake figured it was time to introduce the Cathari to what he considered one of humanity's greatest achievements, making food actually taste good. The concept of seasoning, cooking techniques, and food preparation was apparently as foreign to them as quantum physics would be to a goldfish. "So you're telling me," Growlfang said, examining Jake's small collection of basic spices with the intensity of an archaeologist studying ancient artifacts, "that humans deliberately add these plant substances to their food to alter its flavor?" "That's right. We call it seasoning. It's the difference between eating to survive and eating to enjoy life." Fang Whisper sniffed nervously at a container of what Jake had labeled as alien-safe herb blend. But what if these additives change the fundamental nature of the prey? What if by seasoning our catch we're somehow dishonoring its sacrifice? What if the bouncer's spirit becomes confused in the afterlife because it no longer tastes like itself? Fan Whisper, I promise you the bouncer's spirit is not going to file a complaint with the Cosmic Flavor Police. Jake began demonstrating basic food preparation techniques, starting with the simple process of cleaning and cutting the meat properly. This immediately led to their first cultural clash when Gralfang insisted on performing what he called the ritual of gratitude to the fallen prey. "Oh great bouncer spirit," Gralfang intoned, holding the prepared meat above his head like some kind of carnivorous communion wafer. "We thank you for your noble sacrifice. May your essence nourish our bodies and your speed become our speed." "That's very touching, Gralfang, but the meat is getting cold." "The ritual cannot be rushed, Captain Morrison. Proper respect must be paid, or the prey's spirit might curse our digestive systems." While Gralfang conducted his lengthy spiritual meat ceremony, Jake turned his attention to teaching the others about fire safety and cooking techniques. This proved to be a mistake of cosmic proportions. The first disaster occurred when one pack member, whose name translated roughly to Blazeclaw, decided that if a small cooking fire was good, then a massive inferno would be better. Jake turned around to find him attempting to roast their dinner using what appeared to be a jury-rigged plasma torch he'd somehow constructed from salvaged ship components. "Blazeclaw, no. We're cooking dinner, not launching it into orbit." "But Captain Morrison, surely maximum heat equals maximum cooking efficiency." The resulting explosion singed everyone's eyebrows and launched their carefully prepared bouncer about 50 feet into the air, where it landed in a tree and had to be retrieved by a very embarrassed climbing expedition. The seasoning experiment that followed was even more catastrophic. Jake had carefully explained the concept of a little goes a long way when it came to spices, but the Cathari had apparently interpreted this as use everything you can find in quantities that would make a professional chef weep. Fang Whisper, in his enthusiasm to embrace this new culinary frontier, had gathered what he proudly announced was a selection of local flavor enhancers. These turned out to be various alien plants that ranged from mildly hallucinogenic to potentially lethal. Jake watched in horror as the beta wolf began enthusiastically sprinkling what looked like glowing purple moss over their dinner. Stop right there, Fang Whisper. What exactly is that?" "This? Oh, this is shimmer moss. It makes everything taste like starlight and dreams, very popular among the local herbivores." "And why do you think the herbivores like it?" Fang Whisper paused, his hand frozen mid-sprinkle. "Because it tastes good? Or because it makes them high as a kite and unable to run away from predators? Put down the potentially psychoactive seasoning." After confiscating several more questionable spices that ranged from alien equivalents of poison ivy to what appeared to be some kind of carnivorous fungus, Jake managed to guide them through preparing their first properly cooked meal, using only ingredients that wouldn't kill them or send them on interdimensional vision quests. The moment they tasted properly seasoned, well-cooked meat was nothing short of revelatory. The entire pack went silent, chewing slowly with expressions of pure amazement. It was like watching people discover fire for the first time, if fire had been made of flavor and wonder. "This is..." Gralfang began, then stopped, apparently searching for words adequate to express his culinary epiphany. "This is what food can taste like?" whispered another pack member. "We have been eating like savages," Fang Whisper declared, though his anxiety was temporarily replaced by something approaching religious ecstasy. "All these cycles, consuming raw flesh like mere beasts, when we could have been dining like civilized beings," Jake suggested. "Like gods," Fang Whisper finished reverently. As they shared their first proper meal together, Jake found himself learning about Cathari culture in return. Their pack structure was far more complex than he'd initially understood, with elaborate honor codes and social hierarchies that governed everything, from who could speak first in the morning to the proper way to announce your intention to take a nap. "So, let me get this straight," Jake said, trying to wrap his head around their social customs. "If you want to suggest a hunting strategy, you first have to formally request permission to share wisdom from the Alpha, then state your credentials for having an opinion, then present your idea in the form of a question rather than a statement?" "Correct," Gralfang nodded. "It maintains pack harmony and ensures that all voices are heard with proper respect." "And how long does this usually take?" "For a simple hunting suggestion? Usually about 20 minutes of formal protocol." Jake shook his head. No wonder the bouncers kept getting away. By the time you finished asking permission to suggest chasing them, they'd probably died of old age. The cultural exchange continued as the evening wore on. Jake learned that the Cathari had an incredibly complex system of honor that required them to formally announce their intentions to pretty much everything, from prey animals to rocks they intended to sit on. In return, he shared stories of human hunting techniques, cooking traditions, and the revolutionary concept of just doing things without a 30-minute formal introduction. As the alien stars emerged in the purple sky above them, Jake realized that despite their initial incompetence, the Cathar were genuinely intelligent beings who had simply been trapped by their own overly elaborate social structures. They weren't bad hunters because they lacked ability. They were bad hunters because their culture had made the simple act of catching dinner into a bureaucratic nightmare.